Okay, we're ready now to call our meeting to order. If we could get a roll call, please.
Chairman Winters,
Here.
Vice Chairman Wilson,
Here.
Board Member Ezell, Board Member Rogers,
Here.
Board Member Stevens.
If everyone would stand with me and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our last meeting was December the 14th, and we have the minutes to approve, but we have a correction on it. Vice Chairman Wilson stood in for me, so we need to make the correction that I was not present at the last board meeting. Any other changes need to be made? Okay. I get a motion to approve the previous minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion to second. Can we get a roll call, please?
Board Member Rogers,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Wilson,
Yes.
Chairman Winters.
Yes, ma'am. We have two cases on the agenda tonight. The first one is 1302 Pleasant Street. Mike, you're going to speak to us about that one?
Good evening, everyone. Yes, 1302 Pleasant, I finally got the substantial improvement form back from the owner. It was actually kind of beneficial that this case was kind of stuck in limbo for a while, because during the transition period on this, when Mr. Parks owned the house, the new owner, the tax assessor, assessed the value at $48,600, I think it was. So he was able to add, a substantial amount of money to the place to rehab it. So he followed under the 50% rule. But it's not out of the clear yet. So, I mean, with the substantial improvement that I do have here, if anything in that substantial improvement is that's noted in it does not coincide with what they're doing at the house, I can stop the work on that and reassess this. So there's still the potential of that house being raised. But as of now, I do have the substantial improvement form and the flood development permit. I'm asking the case to be closed out.
Okay. Any questions, discussion? Okay.
If you're good with it, I guess we are. I know that it's being in the flood zone there creates challenges, so we'll just see as it progresses.
That's all we can do right now. I mean, he came under, like I said, by, I think it was $500 to $600, which is very close. You either have to equal it or exceed it to do the 50% rule on that. So there again, they're very close. So if there's something that changes while I'm doing the inspections on this house, like I said, it still has the potential of being raised.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor.
I'll make a motion we accept.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Get a roll call, please.
Board Member Rogers,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Wilson, Chairman Winters.
Yes, ma'am. The next property is 1222 Reeves Avenue. You have a report for that one, please?
I do. During the, this one's been in limbo for quite a while now too. Charlie Ritchie originally had this case. It was dated 11/8 of 2018 when he did the notice to repair, clean up, or demolish on it. Since then, we had a structural engineer look at the home. You guys are aware of that. A building permit was issued for the house 9/11 of 2020. As of today, I have still not been there to do any inspections, which leads me to believe that no work's been done on it. So now we're looking at the building permit. I believe I told Melissa it was March the 20th. I did give a couple of extra days in there because in our ordinance there were certain days that you're not allowed to work on things, your Thanksgiving break and your Christmas day. So I, gave her a little bit more time on that. I don't know if I should have or not, but officially it would run out March the 10th was when the 180 days on the building permit expires. So at that point, it's null and void again. So here we are starting back over on this. I didn't try reaching out to Michelle or the contractor. I've done this in the past with text messages. That's the only thing she'll reply to. We did Melissa sent out a notice. We got the green card back, so service wasn't satisfied on that one.
Everything came back, so she wasn't getting her mail.
Either.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
All the mail that I had sent her was sent back to us, so she's not getting her mail.
Oh, okay.
So she does not know about the,
It's my understanding there's been some complaints from some of the neighbors. I live just a few blocks from that property, and I've been by it several times, and nothing's been done to the house as far as outside appearance goes.
Right. I've never been out to do any inspections on the foundation footings or anything like that. Like I said, which leads me to believe no work's been done on it. And like I said, I brought this to you guys for just to revisit it because we're getting ready. Like I said, the building permit's getting ready to expire. So we're back in with the original order. I believe it was. And reading through this, when Mr. Ritchie did this, I did notice on the repair, cleanup, or demolish, nothing was ever checked at the bottom here, whether it was to repair, demolish, or clean the house up. So I'm curious at how Mark might perceive this as how we should proceed with the house itself, since nothing was ever, checked on the condition of how it should be, handled. Sure.
Let's see it. I'm looking up the Reeves Avenue is the address of home. Let's see here. Is Michelle Williams still the owner?
It's Michelle Cagle Couch.
That's correct.
Okay, all right. And the property, the assessor's office still has it at Michelle Williams, but in any event, that's the address on file is the 1222. Everything's coming back undelivered? Is our regular US mail coming back, or is it?
No one resides in that property. She had a different address the last time she was before the board.
Okay,
The house had been vacant 16 years before Charlie Ritchie signed it in 2018.
They were using it for storage.
Yes, well, her discussion was that she was going to give it to her daughter for graduation from college. And, she had her daughter here one visit, her daughter looked like she was old enough to have graduated
I
4 or
remember.
5 years ago.
yeah,
And,
okay.
enough is enough for the neighborhood. I mean, I think this falls in some of the plans that we're looking at as far as beautification for our city, correct, Mark?
Yeah, right, yeah, I agree with that, Commissioner. My suggestion being that there wasn't a check at the bottom here is we go through this serve notice effective immediately of, since the building permit doesn't even expire till March.
100. Yeah, the 10th of this month is actually. So you're looking at Thursday, right? I believe it is.
Well, I guess technically they still have 2 days to,
Technically, they do. Mm-hmm.
I don't see it. Okay, maybe they might accomplish what they're supposed to in 2 days, but no permit, I mean, that was the building permit, but you've not seen any sort of materials there to.
I have not.
Well, I think on the day of the following day, following the expiration of the building permit, you need to issue notice to the property owners. The property address on the tax assessor is 1222 Reeves Avenue. You may need to do it by posting on the door, as well as U.S. mail, and I'd send certified again. Get evidence of the posting, just to capture a photograph. You might even just use one of those big yellow signs. This property will be subject to a housing commission meeting scheduled for April 12th at 5:30 p.m. And I know we're probably not able to get access to the inside. I'm assuming Charlie Ritchie probably, looks like, I'm just looking in here, was able to obtain access to the interior. However, you may not be able to do that, but no repairs have been made. And so really, let's just send notice to them of the hearing. It's gonna be on April 12th, 5:30 PM. And it's gonna be to review the property owners need to show cause. I'll prepare the order if they need to show
Okay.
cause. So if we're doing anything, let's have a motion here to set this matter for April 12th for a show cause hearing pursuant to the notice of cleanup demolished dated 11/8/2018. And the property owner needs to show cause as to why demolition of the property should not proceed. So let me shorten it up. Really, it's the motion, if the will of this is to get these people back in April, then let's have a motion to reset this for April 12th for a show cause hearing and to have the property owners appear here at that time at 5:30.
So how can we make sure that she gets this notice? Can we go through either TAWC or the Electric Power Board or someone, because there should be power to the house still, or at least water.
If I'm not mistaken, at some point I heard she was living off Oakdale. I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, is this something maybe we could hand deliver? We could have one of the police officers hand deliver this, Mark?
Yeah, so that's a great point. That the concern, unfortunately, I have is we definitely want to get service to these people. Under the law, our requirement is that we are able to look at the tax records and see, and we're required to send notice certified to the location. If we can't find them, then we post it on the residence, and that's of course what we're going to do here. If we start really trying to headhunt unlocated owners, and that becomes something, a precedent that we do, then the one time we don't find that person, they're going to raise the issue that, wait a second, your standard practice is to go and do these additional efforts, and I think there's a chance you could set the city up for some form of invalid efforts if you don't always do that with every property. So I mean, my suggestion is comply with the law, what the minimal standard is, which is notice on the property. You don't even have to use a big yellow sign, but my recommendation is put a big yellow sign. So hopefully if Miss Williams or somebody that knows Miss Williams is driving by, they see that and call her, send certified and send U.S. mail. And if you want, I'm okay. Let's try to send a police officer to the property. I agree with Mr. Wilson. If electricity is there, do we know if anyone's living there?
It looks deserted. I've driven by several times after neighbors have called, and her last activity on Facebook was April the 12th of 2020. So she's been active in there some degree. I remember in the process too, she also brought us a handwritten letter from a doctor that's an emergency room doctor in Crossville, Tennessee, saying that she had health issues such as a gallbladder or something. And I thought it was odd. It was handwritten. It was written from Barry Wagner, who's really an instructor of medicine rather than an emergency room physician at this point.
What? I'm going to look back in our records here and see if I can find what address she gave for us. If we have that, here's one from, let's see, I've got one from 19. I don't show an alternative address for her, but that doesn't mean there isn't one.
And apparently you were fairly much on target about Oakdale, because on April the 12th, April 13th, she posted the flooding has reared its head again. So I mean, she hasn't touched this in almost a year.
You might send a police officer. If we are charged, if we have reason to believe that we have knowledge of some alternative living location, let's put a police officer on it and have him keep his records for the efforts he gives for personal service on Oakdale.
Okay.
So those are the 4 efforts: sign, posting, the posting of it, certified, U.S. mail. Let's get a police officer to try to locate her. And those are all still in accordance with the minimal requirements, because now that we know that there's at least a belief she's on Oakdale, we're taking reasonable efforts to try to locate her. And I think if there's ever a challenge to service, we're going to be satisfied. We will have satisfied that requirement. I'll prepare the order. Let's get a motion. If I understand the body, this council wants to get her here in April 12th at 5:30 p.m. for a show cause hearing, and I'll
Okay.
prepare the order.
Is there any way you could reach out through her parents that own the Micromedia building at South Seminole and Ringo Road? That's her dad. His name is Cagle.
Would that be an avenue I should take, reaching out to parents? I mean,
It goes back. It's one of those no good deed goes unpunished.
Right.
We could, but the minute we don't do that effort for someone else that challenges
Okay.
service, this city could be potentially exposed for not taking action with respect to property B that you did with property A. And you're sitting there saying, we're not required to, and I think you might find a court say, well, no, but you all assumed those efforts, and you need to do it for everybody. So I certainly can appreciate the intent. I just hate to set us up for potential exposure later down the
Right.
road.
the reason I brought up the Oakdale, I do believe we have a green card that actually has an Oakdale address on it somewhere. Is that not correct, Melissa?
I'd have to look.
Okay.
Is it not, it's not in her file? If not, it might be,
I have one here for 1635 Springvale Road. That's all I have.
All right. Do we have a motion, set this matter for show cause?
Okay. I make a motion, we set this property up for a show cause hearing on April the 12th, 2021, on a Monday at 5:30 p.m. In this courtroom, so we can address outstanding issues with this piece of property. We will post a sign on the property. We will send notices by the U.S. Mail and Post Office. We will also send a police officer to their property.
Need a second?
Second.
We have a motion to second. Get a roll call, please.
Board Member Rogers,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Wilson,
Yes.
Chairman Winters.
Yes, ma'am. All right. Do we have any other business to come before the board?
Mark, the email I sent you, do we want to discuss that, or do we want to wait till we have a full staff here?
I want to have that, and are you talking about kind of the city's efforts on the,
Yeah.
what-
Beautification.
Yeah, so the city has an interest, and Mr. Wilson and I have even met with city representatives of the city of Chattanooga and also talked to MTS. We recognize that there are gaps right now with respect to this body's ability is to condemn if there's a finding of certain failed standards that have been met under Title 13. Then you've got your AHO, which is able to fine, but isn't permitted to take affirmative efforts or require affirmative action with respect to cleanup of properties. What we're trying to find is strike a balance between those two when you have properties that are otherwise habitable, but they're still in conditions that raise significant hazardous concerns. What efforts can the city take to get those self-help remedies done? If it's a vehicle in a driveway or in a yard that won't be moved, that hasn't been moved in a year, because you all, I assume, are getting calls from concerned citizens saying, we need these places cleaned up. So there may be there are efforts to try to look at the current state law as well as talk to MTS representatives about modifying Title 13 or perhaps other sections of the code to see what additional efforts can be put into the code to allow the city to take certain self-help actions for certain things that don't quite meet the standard of condemnation. and a fine just doesn't seem to motivate these property owners to clean up. And so we'll report back to you and get some information.
And there are laws on the books in the state of Tennessee that we could use to address that, correct?
Well, we're going to look again. I want to look at Title 13. I
We
think
got those emails from cases you sent me.
Yeah, we've got those. So we'll look at them, but we'll make sure that the code sections, when we do it, are, impervious to attack, at least from a constitutional or from an unlawful standpoint. And we'll get those so you all can look at them. I don't know that this body right now, this body right now is the authority is limited to condemnation. It may be, and I've talked to the city of Chattanooga, they take things like that nature to the city. They have an AJ, an administrative judge that's different from an AHO, and it hears those cases and has the authority to award certain actions or order the city to undertake certain actions. But all of it has due process considerations, so we've got to be careful with it.
I have one more question. What determines what goes to AHO and what comes to the Housing Commission? How do inspectors decide that?
So the AHO, that's things like your care premise, things wrong with your house, whether it be, siding coming off of it, things of that nature, abandoned cars, inoperable cars, like that. The housing board, it's somewhat different. That's when the house hits a certain percentage of, could you classify this as being condemnable and being demolished? If it's 50% damaged, things of that nature, that's when it's brought to the housing board. Okay. In this case, you've got a foundation that poses a serious threat that, even though in the structural engineer's report it says it's very rare for a wall because it's a slow-moving process with hydrostatic pressure on that wall, but it can happen. Just because it says it's rare doesn't mean it won't happen. Right. Yeah.
Okay, because I know we went from 17 to 25 cases a month before we had the COVID break, and then we went to either 0, 1, or 2. How do we switch from so many cases to none? Who made that determination as to why those cases were pulled out from this board?
That I couldn't answer. Once again, I've been introduced back into the housing board now, so you'll be seeing my face or Mike Flynn's from now on.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is the purpose of how many other inspectors do we have? 2 or 3 now?
So we have 2 code enforcement officers and 2 residential inspectors, myself and Mike Flynn.
Okay, so you're down doing residential plus commercial?
I do mainly commercial now.
Okay.
So I do get the occasional residential that I go out and do. There again, I haven't, normally it would be code enforcement. They're out on the streets seeing a lot more than what I'm seeing. So they're in the neighborhoods every single day. They might bring a house, like for Clemens, for example, when we close that one out, things of that nature. They go into a lot more houses than I do, or see a lot more houses than I do.
Okay. But to me, it just seems like we've made a 180-degree turn where this board was seeing cases moving forward and clearing things up. Then all of a sudden, it just stopped. And I don't understand that.
I don't disagree. It has slowed down somewhat. Like I said, me and Mike, we're doing inspections, plan reviews, things of that nature, versus being out looking at houses every day. If code enforcement feels it's necessary to bring me or Mike out to a house, we absolutely go and look at it at that point. And that would be an instance where we might introduce that house into the housing board.
Okay. It's puzzling because I ride around and I see things that are just very obvious and blatant, and they're not being addressed. And they've sat there for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And, under Title 13, it says that the Housing Commission is required to report a house to codes within 24 hours of that observation or it being pointed out to us. Well, we send in, and then we reach back, and we never hear anything. It does say in that first paragraph of Title 13 that we are to follow up with codes. Well, we do. Nobody gets back to us. So what do we need to do to tighten this up?
When you're referring to those houses, are we talking about an AHO, for instance, or are we talking about a house being introduced to this board?
What?
Because it would be very difficult to see a house from the street and say, that's over 50% damage without going inside of that house.
Right.
To me, that's more of an AHO issue.
Well, but I guess my question is, if you look at the guidance of Title 13, which is correct, a TCA code.
Well, it's Title 13 of the city code.
Okay, but it says the Housing Commission is required to report a property to codes. If we see that it's derelict, it has issues, I would assume that would fit into place if we see them doing major remodeling or repairs or putting a roof on and so forth like that. I know to some people, you know, a $35 or $45 permit for a roof replacement seems, I guess, insignificant or whatever, but there's more to that. It affects the property tax mill rates that we get as a city, and we need every penny of revenue that we can generate. And I'm not, you know, trying to be negative towards property taxes, but if you put a roof on your house, 1 year later, your mill rate's going to go up because that's an improvement. That's not a repair. If you put in a swimming pool, 1 year later, they're going to come out and your property tax is going to go up. That benefits the revenue streams that we need for our infrastructure in this city. And to me, we need our codes to be beefed up some way. We need, and I know they don't want to hear this, but they need to be out on Saturdays and give that person, you know, a day off or half day off through the week, because the roofers around this area know if I go to East Ridge on Saturday or Sunday, codes won't ding me. That's known by half the roofers in town. And those are the type of things and changes we need. You know, like we talked with Chattanooga, they say they will target a certain geography or geographic square, and they will go in there in a blitz, and they'll bring all their inspectors in and check every piece of property that's in that, rather than stay in their office or, you know, not get out and spend time looking at issues within the city. How do we change that? I mean, how do we move forward?
There are also rights the citizens have as well. I mean, we can't, as code enforcement, just can't, you know, go onto someone's property without their permission.
I understand that.
I don't, you know, this blitz that you're referring to with Chattanooga, I don't know how they operate. I know within the last month you actually had copied me on an email about a gentleman that had built a carport. I made the gentleman cut 10 feet of that off because he also did not have a permit, and he was too close to the right-of-way. So if you're not getting the response that you need from code enforcement, maybe you should just address it to me, and then we could take it from there.
That's what I'm thinking. From my last 2 or 3 emails, that's what I've found to do. Used to, we just, like, if I sent one to Charlie, copied Kenny, it was taken care of in 3 days.
Right.
And he would get back and say, hey, I checked that piece of property, here's what I did, I'll send you an email on it for your records, or we'll bring it up to the next Housing Commission meeting. And it seems we're not giving the same due diligence that we did in the past. What is the requirements for a code person to be able to inspect properties? Are there state guidelines and restrictions or trainings or so forth they have to go to? Any test or certification?
Sure, there's ICC tests that they have to take to be a residential and a property maintenance inspector.
Okay, and if they're not credentialed, can they go out and inspect properties?
They still can, yes. It's better to have that in court to.
I wouldn't recommend that we send them out for fear that they encroach upon a violation that otherwise exposes the city to liability. You know, I'm going here and, you know, obviously we have what our authorities are of our inspectors. It's spelled out. That's pretty clear that they have. And Title 13's Chapter 3. And then it also enumerates what the powers are. That's specifically 308 is the powers of the inspector and what they're permitted to do. And then, of course, you got the power of the commission at 309. And the way that the code is set up is the inspectors are charged with going out. They look at it. If they see something, then they report that, and they send it up to the extent that there's a determination that it's to be sent forward. Then from there, it goes to the Housing Commission once it's been found that a property is unfit for human habitation. And those are the notices that we send, that we get, that you had even for Charlie Ritchie there. And then from there, it gets sent up to the Housing Commission, and they're required to hear such cases, which is what we're setting. So I'm going to look at the code. I'd like to even get these things moving on the modifications to Title 13 if we can. And assuming that we feel like they are firm and impervious to attack, at least from a constitutionality and a legal standpoint, this may help clarify and give some of the powers to get these things done. And Ms. Howell, I think this is a good start, and so get this here, and appreciate you being here, and hopefully we can get back to seeing the continued efforts that y'all in the department have done over the last, we're now year 5 for me, and so. Okay.
Thank you.
And thank you for getting back real quick on that carport property. I mean,
My job.
I really appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Any other business before the board?